This week in the field, I'm answering your questions about camera gear. Hey everybody, I'm Scott Davenport. Welcome to In the Field. Thanks for joining me. Before I get into today's questions, which have a gear theme to them, I want to thank everyone for subscribing to the channel. We went over 1,500 subscribers, and that's just great. And our little corner of the internet's growing, and I think that it's a nice, inviting place. There's some good questions and answers and back and forth on the videos. And it's not a numbers game. Really, that's not why I do this, to get, massive amounts of numbers and followings and so forth. But it is encouraging that people are enjoying the videos and wanting to come back and see them again. So if you subscribed, thanks very much. If you haven't, think about it. Maybe you'll want to subscribe as well. So let's get into today's questions. First question I got several times in the last couple of weeks is, what neutral density filters do I recommend? We're talking about the stops, not the brand. I have a different video. I've talked all about the filter system that I use, and also some videos on the differences between the square slide-in filters and the screw-in type filters. So you can check out those videos for information about that. We're talking about the stops. And so for me, the stops that I carry in my bag, I carry a 4, a 10, and I recently got a 6. So the 4 stop is my workhorse, and it's really for the type of ocean photography and seascapes that I do. That's the one that comes out of the bag most often, and it's the one that lets me get into that half-second to 2-second range of a exposure time to get that nicer smooth drag on the water, but still have textures and fingers of foam and a feeling of motion going through them. So if I have to make a recommendation of only one to have in the bag, if you're doing any type of ocean photography or like traffic trails on a reasonably busy street, because traffic's moving pretty well, 4 stop is a really good choice. The 10 stop, that was the second one I put in my kit, and that helps me extend my shooting day as well as do some more creative things. So extending my shooting day means if it's getting brighter out after a sunrise, I can throw the 10 stop on there and still slow things down a bit, get the drag on the water that I like, or completely smooth out everything. The interesting angle to it is you can use a long exposure to make things disappear. Like if you're trying to photograph a pedestrian intersection or a place that has a lot of tourists, but you don't want the tourists or the people in the shot, you make the exposure really long, and as long as people move through the frame, they disappear, and you're left with whatever scene it is you were photographing. So that's some ideas in addition to the water photography that I think I'm kind of known for. That's another way I'll use a 10 stop. Why did I add the 6? That was really kind of an adjunct to having the 4 stop. There are occasions where it is still kind of bright out, and I need that extra cut of a couple of stops of light to get into that sweet spot that I like for my ocean photography. So that's what I carry: 4, 6, and a 10, and the 4 is definitely by far the filter I use the most. The next question I received multiple times is, what rain cover did I use in the video where I was showing some behind the scenes footage from Cape Kiwanda. So this is it right here, the Rugged rain cover. It is very simple, very basic. It's completely inexpensive. I think you get 2 of them for less than $5 US. And it is really just a big plastic, almost like a plastic sock. It just fits over your camera. It's got a little drawstring on it to tie it shut. I'll put a link to this product on the show notes here, but it's a Rugged is the brand name. And again, there's nothing more than a thin piece of plastic that will keep your camera dry and let you shoot out in the rain. Last question I have for today, not really a gear question, more of a shooting question. It came up several times during my last San Diego workshop, is where to focus in the scene. And I did a blog post that goes into more details on this, and there'll be a link below so that you can see the full write-up on this. But the short version is 1/3 of the way into the scene. So if you're thinking from, you're framing from top to bottom, you want to come in about 1/3 of the way in. Except when that doesn't make sense. And so now let me explain. So if you've got interesting things all the way through your frame, about 1/3 of the way in is a good place to focus because you'll get the maximum depth of field, which is often what we're after in a landscape photo. Where it doesn't make sense is if you have areas of your foreground that are kind of void of something interesting or are going to be smoothed out, like the neutral density question and answer we were talking about a minute ago. So if there's like a lone rock or a tree in the foreground and then nothing going on behind it until something far off in the background, you want to focus on that element that is very prominent in your foreground. So generally, it's 1/3 of the frame in, but you do need to be aware of what's in your photo and decide what needs to be the crispest, sharpest part of that photo. Some kind of corollaries or adjuncts to this is, well, what about hyperfocal distance? I get asked about that quite a bit. I don't do it. I have the calculator and I understand what hyperfocal distance does. The challenge I have with it is I'm not carrying a meter stick with me, and so when the application tells me focus, 12.3 meters into the scene, I don't quite necessarily know exactly where that is. So I just don't do hyperfocal distance. Focus stacking, I will do that, but it depends on the scene. Since I'm shooting at the ocean a lot, the ocean is moving around. And so when I try to take like a focus stacked shot, with the ocean changing in between those shots, it's kind of hard to do the stitching later, and different wave crests in different frames will be sharper as a result. But for different types of scenes, like if you're out in the desert or the mountains where things are more static, or macro photography is a great example for doing focus stacking. That's a great time to do that kind of thing. You don't have to worry about hyperfocal distance or where to focus or so forth. You focus everywhere and let the software stitch it all together. So that's kind of my take on where to focus in a frame. And again, you can check out the blog post for more deeper thoughts on that topic. That's going to wrap it up for this week in the field. Hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've got questions, go ahead and send them on in to me. You can contact me through my website, comments on the blog, below the video, on the blog, on YouTube, wherever you're watching this, there should be a comment box. You're welcome to toss something in there. Let me know that this was enjoyable for you, or if you've got a question about photography, I'd love to hear about it. Well, until next time, my name's Scott Davenport, and happy shooting. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to take some questions and answers. How about we take questions and give answers? I'd rather take answers and give questions.